Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, I've got my emoji starting already. This is my absolute favorite thing about our platform is our emoji walls. All right, I see everybody filing in. This is the weirdest part about COVID life, I think, is emceeing events like this where I can't see any of your faces right now, but I'm assuming everybody's taking a seat. We're all, getting either some water, some caffeine, getting ready for an awesome conversation. My name is Jenny Stojkovic. I'm your host today. Is this your first Vegan Women's Summit event? So if it's your very first one, how about you give me a heart in the emojis? Oh, we got some newcomers. All right. And if you are a VWS veteran, maybe give me a little clapping emoji. Let's see it. Do we got any veterans? We got any diehards that are here every single month with me? Awesome. Well, welcome to today's event. We are very excited to have, in my opinion, probably some of the most incredible food service leaders in the industry, bar none. They just happen to be all women leaders, per usual. Maybe there's a coincidence there. And we are going to have a really great conversation about how you can accelerate your growth in the food service industry. Maybe you're not even sure what food service is. Maybe you're wondering, how does food service kind of play into the entire spectrum of food and beverage? How is it different than going to retail? Things like that. So we want to teach you everything you need to know about how you can get into the industry, some of the pros, cons, and really just give you a chance to talk to actual industry veterans and leaders. These are the women that speak all across the world and all of the conferences because they do really important work. So I've got a couple housekeeping tips that I'm going to go through. And then, of course, we will get to bringing up our esteemed panelists. So first things first, this event is recorded. Number one question that we get, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I didn't get a chance to write it down. Don't worry, it's recorded. And what that means is when I send this recording out to you, what are you going to do? Share it to your network. Because these are amazing events. We want to make sure everybody is getting all of this content. And we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to learn from these women. Next, okay, you've got to be following Vegan Women's Summit on social, right? If you have not had a chance to, please hop over to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and you can go to @Vegan Women's Summit or on Twitter, if you're into Twitter, @Veg Women's Summit. We meet so many awesome women through these platforms and many men as well. So I just want to make sure that we stay connected to you so that you can join each of these awesome events that we continue to produce each and every month. Next, we have a private LinkedIn group. Yeah, we have our own VWS Pathfinders group. It's awesome. This is for all you industry professionals that want to be talking shop. You can join in the chat. We'll drop the link and send a request to join our private LinkedIn group so you can keep the conversation going. All right. You will see my name. See that right there, Jennifer Stojkovic? That is your ability to hover over and connect with me. So you're going to be seeing all kinds of different names throughout today's conversation. As all the panelists come up on stage, you'll be able to hover over and also see their profiles to connect. The most popular thing that people love about these events is connection. Everybody wants to network and connect. So I really encourage you to take a look at everybody's profiles. They're up on stage. Send a connection request so you can continue the conversation past today's panel. Next, you see all these little bubbles at the bottom here? That's all of you. So if you want to make sure that people can connect with you, you can see in the top right corner over there, it's probably going to have just your initials if you haven't put your photo in it. There's your opportunity to fill in your profile. And so throughout today's conversation, as we're speaking up on stage, you can browse who's in the audience. So this is kind of like that when you sneak out of the conference and you go grab a coffee and you're kind of like speaking to the people in the hallway, seeing what they're up to. And that's really what we're trying to emulate here, an actual opportunity to connect with one another. So please make sure you fill out that profile. Next, you'll see a questions tab over there. So on the right, you see that little question mark right there? Give me a thumbs up if you see it. Everybody's got it? Cool. That's where you enter your questions throughout today's conversation. So please don't drop them in the chat. Put them in the questions tab so that I can keep track and ask all of your questions to our panelists. So throughout today's conversation, drop questions at any time. No worries. The run of show for today is going to be, we have a panel conversation coming up, live Q&A. Then Trish from Copper Branch and I have a special announcement of our 3 finalists for our Plant Powered Glow Up contest. And then the piece à la résistance, we will have live networking. So everybody that is here right now, you'll get the chance to pop on live and meet all of the other attendees. So it's really fun, really great way to interact and connect with folks. I encourage you to stay on for that last half an hour if you want to meet people in the audience. Last thing, before we bring everybody up, if you have any trouble today, first things first, Google Chrome. Please make sure you're using Google Chrome. It's our best browser. That's usually one of the big things with troubleshooting is you're using a different browser. So please make sure you're using Google Chrome. And if you're having trouble with sound or video or anything like that, just refresh the page. That fixes 99% of things. It's kind of like the old, did you unplug it and plug it back in? Yeah. Well, refresh is kind of the same thing for us. So, all right. I see questions already filing in. Good to see that. What do we think? Should we bring up our awesome panelists? Yeah? Okay. Let's welcome up to the stage. All right, let's give everybody a second to pop on here. We have, all right. We've got such awesome women that are popping up on stage. We're bringing them on. Connect. We got Annetta, we got Stephanie, we got Michelle. Let's make sure. Okay, we're just going to bring Trish up in a second. Looks like she might have popped offline for just a quick second, so we'll bring her up when she's ready. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
How's it going? Are you guys in?
Marvelous.
All right. I think this, oh, there we got Trish.
Hello.
We have the whole crew here. Welcome. Okay, so first off, I want to go around the room real quick and give you each a chance to introduce yourselves. I'm sure many of you guys in the audience know these amazing women, but if not, I love giving everyone a chance to kind of tell their own story and why you're interested in the plant-based space. So, Stephanie, how about we start with you?
Yeah, so after spending 2 decades working for big companies, I had a moment of clarity and started thinking about the implications of what I was doing for a living on my nephew's life, and then spent a couple of years on my parents' little farm and realized that there was so much more I could be doing for the next generation and the generation after that if I took my knowledge and my network and put it to better uses, and here we are.
Awesome. Annetta?
Hi, I have had over 25 years of experience in food service, and I would say what's interesting to me about the plant-based space is that there's a community and there's a connection with that consumer, and it's really about making the world a better place, and that's what I really love about the products and why I am interested in it.
Amazing. Michelle?
Well, I've grown up in food service my whole career through distribution and manufacturing, and I've done egg products and chemicals. But when the opportunity came available to devote my life to a change for good, I couldn't pass it up. And not only that, but the plant-based movement is such a disruptor in the food service space. I'm nothing like I've ever seen. So I had to be a part of it and make a difference.
Amazing. And Trish?
Thanks, Jenny. My story is similar to Stephanie's. I spent 30 years in a corporate 500 company and was completely burnt out. I was flying all over the world and similarly thinking, what am I doing to change the world? What's my purpose? And found plant-based and really focused on the health aspect of it to start, and realized that it's so much more than that. And I'm just thrilled to be in this sort of sector right now as it explodes.
Awesome. So one thing that you guys are all very lucky that are watching today's conversation is these women all represent different aspects of the industry and how food service intersects. So this is going to be a really great conversation because you're going to get a lot of perspectives. I think the most basic question we should probably start with, because there's probably some newcomers, is perhaps Stephanie, we'd start with you. can you just explain a little bit about what food service is?
So first, for context, I spent the first 15 years of my career in retail, and retail's boring. Food service is this really big, messy space where you have commercial and non-commercial. So people who are in the business to buy, prepare, and sell food, and then other companies that are in the business of doing something else, like educating our children, K through 12. They just have to actually feed those children, so that's non-commercial. So it's this really wide, and it continues to morph, right? And we're also seeing some interconnection, particularly through COVID, with retail. But it was pre-COVID, it was 51% of consumer spend. I actually think we're going to go back to that, and it's going to continue to increase. But it's a very creative, fun way to interact with consumers and allow them to try your products in a way that's more approachable, particularly if it's something like plant-based where they're not quite sure, can I really cook this like meat? Does it really perform like an egg and baking? And the answer is generally yes, but it allows them to try it and see it without doing it at home and kind of having the question marks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's got to be like the number one question for folks is how do we make sure people prepare it correctly? And I'm curious, Trish, from your perspective, how do you see, as a plant-based restaurant chain, how do you see plant-based food service differ from traditional food service? And then we'll go to you, Michelle and Annetta.
Sure. Well, for our consumer, I would say is a highly educated consumer. Generally, the customer that comes in our doors knows what they want from a nutritional standpoint, expects us to have things segregated by allergen-free zones, gluten-free zones. And there's a higher expectation, I think, in the plant-based sector of restaurant than there is in others. That being said, though, it's amazing to watch the amount of mainstream food service suppliers that are adopting and embracing plant-based in a way that we've never seen before. And we're starting to see vegan sections of menus and vegetarian sections of menus in mainstream restaurants, which is just amazing.
Absolutely.
I agree. I was going to say, I'm looking at it from a very broad perspective across all food service operations, and plants and vegetables are nothing new, right? They are part of food service. So maybe there's nothing different, just the fact that it's taking more of a center stage and people are becoming more increasingly interested in it. I think that's really what is emerging here. And so consumers and operators alike are needing to become more educated, hungry for information, a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding, and then a big push to educate. And so this emerging and developing acceleration is really how I see plant-based within the broader spectrum of food service.
Yeah, and I will add to that. For me, it's very similar, but what's different about it, typically food service, trends start in food service and then make their way into retail, right? So you have a very specific cycle that you take going into the food service, trends coming out of food service. Goes through emerging trend, adoption, proliferation, and then it gets to mainstream. And that's when you start to see it on retail shelves, in the freezer section. That's different with plant-based products. It actually, especially dairy-free and vegan, it started out in retail and now it's coming into food service. And that's because there's a consumer demand for it. They are looking for it, not at home, just at home when they dine at home, but they want it when they dine out. So I think that's really great for the plant-based or vegan type products.
And then I'm going to do a follow-up to you and then open it up to the floor. Are there any really interesting trends that you're seeing in plant-based that perhaps have not occurred in other sectors of the food service industry, or maybe have occurred? Maybe it's something we are seeing again, and it follows a similar trend from a past area.
I can kick it off quickly. The amount of innovation and product development and the speed at which it's happening is unique, I think, in food service. Typically, it's fast followers, but there's this huge push. It's almost like a race to the moon. It's incredible.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that to Michelle. I think to me, when I entered this space 6 years ago, I was used to a channel that frankly is so slow and it refuses to change. And you had these big players. I mean, it was kind of Coke and Pepsi, Tyson and Pilgrim. Like it was an either or, and you kind of had two choices and maybe some regionals, and like they just didn't innovate across the channel because frankly, if you think about a McDonald's with 13,000 restaurants, managing change in that environment, particularly when you have franchisees involved, it's expensive, it's timely, and there are contractual obligations. Who's paying for that change, right? And you have a transient workforce, there's a lot of turnover. They may or may not have English as a first language. I mean, it is a very difficult channel to make change. And so to me, the fact that not just manufacturers are speeding up, but like when I was at Impossible, to go from zero to an LTO that literally within 8 weeks would turn into a national rollout. And I can remember talking to investors and they were like, is this really going to stick? And I'd say, like, I've never seen anything like this. And it wasn't, I thought at the time it was an Impossible phenomenon and a Beyond phenomenon. It is a plant-based phenomenon. And again, the other thing that's fascinating to me, and this is really important for anyone that's trying to launch in the channel, operators are willing to move faster than they've ever moved before. The challenge is distribution is unable, and in some cases unwilling, to move as quickly. So to me, what's going to be really interesting to watch over this next 2 to 3 years is, and COVID allowed some of the distribution gains to move quickly to kind of, they slip back into old habits. Love you mean it, distributors, but so it's going to be fun to see how operators and manufacturers in this space really push to find other avenues for distribution because they'll have to keep up with what consumers want, which is not what was on their plate 10 years ago.
Yeah, I would expand on what Michelle said as well with respect to innovation. I think the science behind food is changing. I mean, when you look at traditional culinary and it was, meat, potatoes, and something special with the vegetable has now become, eggs out of mung beans and fermented cauliflower steaks and things that are just beyond comprehension. So I think even talking to some of the younger youth, we were part of a mentoring program in culinary, and you see kids wanting to be more engaged as opposed to becoming chefs. They want to become food scientists, and they're starting to see all this exploration in science. And I think it's just fascinating to watch the marrying between food and science.
Absolutely. Do you have anything, Annetta?
Yes, I was actually, one of the things I was going to point out was innovation. That's another great thing about the plant-based product space. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of people entering that space. What I would say, what's similar to both plant-based and traditional products and food service, it's all about meeting that customer demand and creating that demand, right? And innovation is so important in that, doing that. Having the right products, the right sales and marketing tools, talent and resources. It's a very competitive marketplace, which I'm sure anyone that's in it know that, but the people that are coming in, you have to be committed to your brand, your messaging, your sustainability story, transparency, being able to supply that customer. Once you get the yes, out of stocks are non-negotiable. It's like you have to have that product available to meet that consumer demand and that operator, because once they get it on their menu, they expect to have access to that product. And a big thing for getting your brand out there, digital presence, being out there in social media, because it is a community. We've all talked about that community. If you're not in those spaces, you're missing a big part of that consumer and those operators that are looking for great products.
Something to add, Stephanie?
So much.
Yeah.
Yes. All of that. So, again, if anybody takes away anything from me today, and anybody that's worked for me or with me or been a client of Elohi's has heard this, you have to slow down to go fast in food service. If you launch out of the gate and you get a lot of pull and you can't supply it, or you have an issue with ingredients or like whatever it is, and you don't have the right foundation in place, you will be on a fast path to nowhere in food service. It's not like grocery. You go to a grocery store, if they're out of it today, you know the next time you're going to stock up. Hello, toilet paper for COVID. It's eventually going to come back and you can buy more. In food service, if that operator doesn't have it in their back of house to put on your plate, they're going to serve something else. They don't get those dollars back. And again, it's Coke or Pepsi. It's Impossible or Beyond, or fill in the blank with all the great innovation that's coming. If they don't have that thing that's going on their menu, they don't get those dollars back. And they will not forgive you for taking that money out of their pocket, nor should they, because they probably mortgaged their home twice to have that restaurant. So get it in order and then go big. Full stop. Off my soapbox now. Well, not really.
I think that there's a lot. I think we've done a really good job kind of establishing, you know, what is the core of food service and how does it intersect with plant-based? How is it different? How is it changing? I'm going to remind folks, I'm seeing a lot of people chattering. Throw those questions in the questions tab. We have tons of time with all of these ladies at the end, so please make sure you throw your questions in there. And then I'm also going to remind you, hover over each of their names so you can connect with them, because they are all building a better food system, and you want to make sure that you're listening to what they are putting out. Okay, so Trish, I'm going to go to you, and then Michelle, I'll go to you afterwards. How has the pandemic changed things? So we kind of had this growing plant-based movement. People were starting to get interested in the food, and then all of a sudden, there was a pandemic that stopped everything. Everybody had to change the way that they were doing food, but also plant-based seemed to skyrocket too. So what does that look like for you on the restaurant side? And then Michelle, I'd love to hear on the product side.
Yeah, well, definitely on the restaurant side, it forced all restaurants to think differently about how we got food to consumers. So the notion of having a customer come into your restaurant, and especially in plant-based QSR that we're in, there's a lot of questions that customers have about the menu, and it's not always intuitive knowing what a bacon tempeh sandwich is. They'll ask a question, and so you've lost that touch with your customer, relying on third-party delivery apps, relying on delivering your own product. So just that pivot to third-party delivery was a big change. But I think also the pandemic introduced this connection of thought and food for people. I think people started to think more about what the implications of food are and what it means to the world and what it means to their bodies. And so we've actually seen a surge in sales in many of our markets, because people are just trying things differently. They're willing to try a plant-based meal once a week, or the flexitarians are coming in and looking for an alternative way to eat. And so we are really starting to see a mindset change since the pandemic and how food changes things in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. From being an old distributor person, right? Like we used to say, like being in distribution is recession proof. Everyone's got to eat. Right. So food service is really untouchable. And when COVID happened, things changed. The brakes were pumped, and scarcity became also something that people were talking about. Right. And I don't believe that scarcity is going away. So finding alternative solutions in our world for every product, especially in the plant-based world, right, is going to be critical for us for the long term as a population and as a world. So I feel like that those two things really pivoted the food service mindset, to Trish's point. And it also, from like a manufacturer standpoint, it seemed like operators paused everything, right? It became a totally different way of operating. Like, we have to do to go, we have to get everything rolling. And now it's like we have to reopen our dining rooms. And so the priorities shifted a lot from product development to, we've got to be able to keep the doors open. And so I've seen operators who really pumped the brakes, and others who took the opportunity to push on the gas. What are we doing? What should we be doing? Let's pause here. Let's take this opportunity to reflect. So it's interesting to see how people are managing through such a complicated time.
So, and then maybe we'll go to you. Is there any trends that we've seen that are expected to stay, that you're telling your clients, hey, this pandemic thing, it's not going anywhere, it's the new normal?
I would say that it's interesting because I've watched trends being in the food service industry for a long time, right? And so health and wellness and better for you trends are here to stay. I mean, there's a lot of innovation around those trends. Plant-based vegan products being the main focus right now because of that growth that we just talked about. And I think, the companies that I've seen do it really well, I have a lot of respect and affinity for Chobani. They do a great job innovating, and they marry their message with their purpose and mission. So I see that there's going to be a lot of innovation that will continue with brands like that are looking to do vegan, clean label, non-GMOs, all natural. Those are the things that they're not going away. It's not a fad. It's absolutely something that's in the marketplace, and there's a lot of growth around it.
What about Stephanie? I'd love your answer to that. And then also Trish and Michelle mentioned below food apps and things like that. Are those a trend, or is that here to stay too, you think?
Yeah, so I would tell you, I believe that delivery is here to stay. So again, if you're thinking about a new product or you're developing for food service and you're not taking into mind how the consumer, they might be eating at home but ordering out. If you're not thinking about the implications of your product for that, does it hold up, right? What does it look like in an hour? What does it look like if it's in a styrofoam container that's basically steaming it, but it's a fried or a coated product, right? So thinking about that, going back to something Annetta said, and one of the reasons that I love the plant-based space is it's this convergence, and it's a convergence of trends that are not going away. So whether you're in plant-based speak for animal welfare, for the environment, or for your health, or some combination of the three, which I think many are, and whether you're Gen Z or Gen X or a boomer or the millennials we all talk about, right? It is a convergence of generations, of socioeconomic, of race, of gender, of diet. Again, that I think this is a I don't know if it's a black swan or a white swan, but it's a moment that I don't think we've seen in food. I know not in my lifetime. So when you talk about trends, I think one of the most important pieces for people to keep in mind, no matter where you are in this ecosystem, is that everyone's coming at this potentially from a different angle, but going the same place. And so back to something Annetta said, which is about messaging. There's a lot of noise for all of us right now in food service. And if you don't really understand where your product fits for an operator and what the implications of what you're doing to the distributor, and you're not educating them on why does an operator, just because it's plant-based doesn't mean they need it, right? And so really understanding who you are as a brand, what you really can and can't do in application, right? And what the implications are for the price point that you're going to create, particularly if you're a center of the plate protein. And this is why we tell people slow down to go fast. You're going to spend a lot of time. You may have the best product for the channel, for the operator, and something the distributor sales rep can sell. And it's meeting all of those implications we just talked about with consumer. But if you don't translate that, or God forbid, you're like going after the wrong type of operator, or they have a distributor agreement that just basically says, sorry, we're not going to stock any more SKUs for you, you're going to spend a lot of time. So get really comfortable with who you are, what your product can do today, what you need to do to make it more literally figuratively palatable in the channel, and then sell. There were pre-COVID like 1.2 million food service outlets. There's a lot of room for plant-based. Get really comfortable with who you are and what your product can do in the channel, and holy crap, like the world is your plant-based oyster.
I think
we need that.
We're going to put the holy crap on the quote card for you, Stephanie.
Yes. Well, that would be cleaning up what I normally say.
Yeah, you want to follow Stephanie for some fire comments on LinkedIn, I got to say. Real quickly, I'm curious from the audience, why don't you do a clapping emoji if you are already in food service, and a thumbs up if you're here to learn about food service. Let's see, let's pull there. Okay, there's a lot of people already in food service, but there's also, okay, so we've got a really good mix of folks that are here to maybe hone in on their chops, but also a lot of folks that are figuring out if this is for them. So one of the things that I'm really curious about is we've kind of covered the generational and the gender and lots of the different demographics of folks that are eating plant-based. And I can tell you from a VWS perspective, we have attendees from every age range, and there's all these different reasons why people are coming to the plant-based space. And definitely from a generational perspective, younger folks always tell us climate. Older folks tend to always tell us personal health. There is some clear lines there. Yeah, Stephanie's like, that's me. I mean, either way, we don't care why you come. We just want you to stay, right? So I'm curious, though, we'll start with you, Michelle, and then you, Trish. How has this changed from outside of North America? So there's a lot of these folks here. We're all in North America at the moment, but you serve all over the world, especially Live Kindly. That's their entire goal, is a collective across the world, right?
We're a collective across the world, coming from South Africa, Germany, UK, in Sweden, and coming together and expanding into the largest markets, which are US and China, right? North America, greater North America. And it's incredible because North America, specifically US, is such a powerhouse of players, right? There's so many people, and same with China, but we're unique and different, and not necessarily the first to really change people's minds, right? So we see a lot more demand in the UK compared to the US, and we're following that trend and trying to understand, exactly what the US consumer really, really wants to see, because it's gone so quickly from, do I have a vegan option on the menu, to what type of vegan option do I want? Do I want healthy? Do I want better for you? Do I want indulgent? Like, what is it going to be? And what does the consumer want? And should I have sodium or not sodium? Like, what? There's so many questions to answer, whereas before it was just more black and white. And so I see that other markets outside the US are certainly moving at faster speeds with moving people along the flexitarian, spectrum. And we're following behind here in the US slightly, but very quickly too. So
interesting. And Trish, obviously Copper Branch, headquartered in Canada, but across the US, France, I think even going down under soon. What's the differences that you're seeing, particularly France? I'm curious. You have quite a presence there.
Yeah, we do. We've got 5 stores in France. We're about to open in Portugal in late August, and we're, it's not that much different. I mean, I think that primarily dominated by dairy and meat alternatives, like a high interest in that, of course. In France, a lot more on the baked goods. There's a lot of more vegan innovation on pastries and croissants and how to get those buttery flavors without using butter. And so minor differences, but honestly, I think Europe, particularly, I would agree, the UK is leading the way. And they're leading the way because their adoption, I think, across outside of just restaurants. You look at what Marks and Spencer is doing, and you look at they're willing to embrace it across all industries. And I think that that's where they have a leg up to North America, where we're so focused on food and food service and less so about design and fashion and cosmetics and other areas of vegan that really have implications as well. And I think that we're getting there, but we're definitely behind where Europe is. Australia is a market we're just entering, and absolutely they're closer to the UK in terms of their advancement in thinking in plant-based again than North America is. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie,
are panelists allowed to ask questions? Because I have a question for Trish after that.
Girl, let's hear it.
So, do you see, Trish, really, like, if I had a hamburger patty, like, would you see major differences in the product that you would serve in France versus Australia versus the US, and what does that look like? Like, if I'm trying to build a brand globally, how much change is there in your product from country to country?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We try, obviously, to minor the amount of differences. Of course, we're We have proprietary recipes that we use for our burgers, and then we'll outsource those to manufacturers in certain strategic regions for us. So our North American production of our burger patties with our proprietary recipe is done by a Canadian manufacturer. We have that similar recipe duplicated in Europe with the European manufacturers. So we try to keep the similarities in terms of recipe, but the actual manufacturers vary region to region. So our distribution and logistics costs are in line. But our newest strategy really is to start to become incubators for local innovators. So we're trying hard, and Jenny's been an amazing part of this through VWS, to connect with food manufacturers directly, not to cut out the distributor, but many of these food manufacturers they're not quite there yet. And people like you and Annetta are obviously helping them, but we're trying to become that sort of creative incubation space for them to launch their product, maybe in an LTO, maybe in a permanent menu. But that's happening region to region with Copper Branch. And as part of our next 12-month strategy rollout is to really connect with those communities in all the various markets that we're present in.
Wow. So I love that we're even getting cross collaboration that's up here on stage, right? That's the entire point of these conversations is we know that there is a community of all of us around the world. We know we're out there, but how do we thread us all together, right? So that's why these conversations are important. That's why this type of networking is really crucial. I'm curious, Annetta, you mentioned Chobani earlier as a brand that is really doing a great job in terms of being engaged with their community. Is there a brand that you would recommend to folks to look to if they want to pivot into food service that you think has done this very effectively? And then perhaps we can go around the room to other folks for their thoughts.
I still, again, will say Chobani. I mean, because of their connection with the consumer, they're in social media, and they have a huge following on every channel that they're a part of. And they just hold true to their community engagement, what they stand for, their mission of making the world a healthier place. And they're doing that in the community. So I have, like I said, a respect and affinity for that brand.
Okay. Stephanie?
I'm going to take a little different tack, and that is, so Annetta talked about kind of that connection to the consumer. I view food service as a B2B2C business. Mm-hmm. And so I would think about it as what are the brands that are have the connection to the operator. And I'm going to go back to my time at Pepsi and going up against Coke. And I think the tools that Coke provided to the operators, and I would argue Pepsi did the same thing, but it was really about getting in the mind of that operator. What can I give to you to help you sell more or save more, right? Because operators generally want one or all of three things. I want to drive more traffic into my restaurant. I want to increase the check size of that table, and or I want to reduce my costs. And the three biggest costs are labor, rent, and food, right? So, that's kind of going old school, but I mean, it was everything from, are you giving them marketing material? Today, are you helping them talk to the consumer, bringing in traffic? I think both Beyond and Impossible did an amazing job of kind of starting that for plant-based. But it's about talking to the consumer, but doing it in a way that you're doing it through the operator so they can talk to their consumer. There's a lot of noise right now. I think a lot of the current kind of upstarts in plant-based are still maybe talking directly to the consumer. And that's, I think D2C has driven some of that behavior, but I think you need to step back and think about how do you speak to the operator that if you want to be on their menu. Yeah. But that's how I think about it. It's a little different lens.
When I think of somebody that did this really well, I still picture that little Impossible flag that came in those burgers. And that's the first plant-based company that I really remember making a true presence on a menu. It really popped off a menu. I mean, the plate arrived on your table, and it was a little ad every single time. And now you're increasingly seeing that with folks, but it definitely was something I had not seen before.
But the irony of that was it wasn't a marketing tool to start. It was a way to say, this is the vegan burger, that's the cow burger, right? So it solved a problem for the operator and the wait staff. It just turned into a brilliant marketing campaign. So again, I would tell you, when you see brilliant marketing in food service, you should step back and think about, I'm seeing that because I'll give you an example. And this is a true story. We had a little card at Impossible that went into every case that explained, like, this is what it is, right? Because again, it was new and people were struggling with that. We figured out that, oh my God, the servers, because could be kind of a difficult question to answer. We're literally handing it out to customers and saying, this is what it is. Or, good thing to have, but the operators were putting it on the table as, oh, like we serve Impossible, yay us, and here's what it is. So we took a step back and I was like, okay, this is a problem. And we created that card so it was consumer facing. Yeah. It's good. Like, yes, we want you, like, if you aren't comfortable explaining it, here. But it was a problem for the operator whose wait staff didn't have time to figure out how to say exactly how we wanted to say it about food. So the best marketing in food service solves an operator's problem first to help them sell more or more profitably to a consumer. And if that's how you approach marketing in food service, you'll be successful. If it's just me and I have the best burger, chicken nugget, fill in the blank, whatever plant-based thing, then you're talking to a retailer or direct to consumer, and you're going to just be noise, or it's never going to make it to the consumer.
That's really great advice, Michelle.
I think that's key advice, right? Because a lot of companies are approaching it from a retail first standpoint, and in food service, which is dominated with private label versus brand. Plant-based has broken that barrier and said, no, we're going brand, and that's going to build credibility in the space. And so it's truly a phenomenon, I think. And just if I could bottle what you just said, Stephanie, and share it again and again, I think that's so true, because not only it's just complicated. You have to market to the operator, you have to educate the operator, and then you also have to drive traffic and draw, right, in frequency through the end consumer there. So it's a complicated system with food service, and the marketing is much more unique, I think, comparatively to retail. And the brand has to have meaning behind it. Brand for brand, it doesn't matter, right? You can say anything, but it needs to be impactful and powerful and pull through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of bottling it, I will say it is recorded. So
good. I'll share.
Everybody's going to be getting this video after that's watching, including all of our panelists. Like, this is really important information. And these people are the veterans of the space. As you can see, these women, they know what they're talking about. So please make sure that everybody shares some of this, because I think there's so much we can do to accelerate growth if we're able to take some of this wisdom and put it out in the community more effectively. Trish, what do you think? You've worked with a lot of brands. Who has been the best to operate? Who gives you the types of materials and the assets that you really need to be able to get your product out efficiently?
The best partners are the ones that will collaborate with you on R&D. So they're the ones that really care about what your next move is. And I'll tell you, there's a little company in Canada called Sweets from the Earth. Most of you probably have heard of them. You've probably seen their things in grocery all over North America, but they have a very collaborative mindset. And so when we talk about heading into the fall and what our fall menu ideation looks like, they're willing to sit at the table with us and come up with ideas. Good Catch, same way. I can sit and call the chef of Good Catch or Swell Catch in Canada, and I can say to him, I'm thinking about a crab cake sandwich for our fall menu. What do you think? And he'll say, here's my 5 products that I have that will work with your concept. And by the way, here's 20 recipes that use your existing SKUs. So the chef of Good Catch asked for a list of our SKUs that our restaurants have in store. We sent it to him, and he came back with 7 crab cake recipes that use our existing SKUs and don't introduce a new product. It was brilliant. And so I think collaborative mindset is so key. And Stephanie, I love what you said. You're bang on in terms of knowing the operator, working with the operator. I think what I find sad about where the industry is right now, traditionally in food service, is that the distributor calls the shots. They call the minimum packaging, they call quantities, they call price. And a lot of times this great innovator, like probably many of the people watching this right now, have this unbelievable product, but they're blocked out of food service because the distributor has got all these demands that they can't meet. And I find that really sad. And I think if we can shift our mindsets to think differently and say, how do we connect the operators to the innovators, not to cut out distributors because they play a very vital role, but they also can be very damaging to the mind process behind some of the great thoughts that are happening in food right now.
All right, well, let's go to questions. And I am going to follow up with you, Trish, because we have a question exactly on that from Nancy. All right, so if distribution is the bottleneck, are operators willing to buy direct?
The answer is absolutely yes. And the answer is also complicated because unless that manufacturer has a logistics strategy or a shipping mechanism to hit every store that the operator has, they almost are forced to go through a distributor. So it's a complicated answer. It's not simple, but I will tell you, as the CEO of an operator, I would love to connect directly. And Jenny, that's why we did what we did with your organization on the competition, was to connect with the underdog that maybe doesn't have that opportunity yet to be big enough to hit a distribution.
Yeah,
we talk about being agile at scale. So it's like, how flexible can you be and still deliver and not short, right? Like how big can you get and still being super agile, whether it's in development or distribution.
Exactly.
All right, I got a great question for you, Stephanie. All right, you ready for it?
Ready.
You're excited about this one.
Okay.
How do I get the buyer to try my product, especially if you do food shows? Which, by the way, Stephanie's literally at a food show right now that she's telling us, like, in the middle of the conference, took a break to join this conference, like to this panel.
Yeah, I am so excited to be out of my house. I can't stand it. I'm at the Dot Foods Innovation Show. And, you know, one of the things I used to always say at Impossible, and anybody that's on that worked for me there, I would always say in food service, like, again, in plant-based, there's a mindset about how it might taste and how it might work in application. And so I would always say, you got to shove a meatball in their mouth. They have to try it to believe it. But you've got to give it to them in different applications too, because they want to make sure that it's going to work in different ways. And one of the hardest things about the pandemic, and I think one of the reasons it was really challenging for people who are launching or were doing the food services, there was no good way to shove a meatball in somebody's mouth, right? And so, and when pre-COVID, operators would tell you one of the best places they would go to discover new items was at distributor shows or industry events, right? And they were, I mean, in the spring and in the fall, that's all you did for about 12 weeks. But it was the best way to get an operator to interact with you and interact with your brand, whether it was you directly, distributor, sales rep, or a broker. We're starting to see distributors announcing, I just saw one this morning, they're starting to come back. The challenge you're going to have as someone who's fairly new, if you're just launching or not really in distribution, is not getting invited to a distributor show if you're not in the distributor. So to answer the question, how do I get the operator to buy my product? This is where I would tell you, if you don't understand and you aren't creating a B2B marketing campaign and getting that operator to understand who you are. 64% of decisions in B2B buying are made before they even want to talk to a sales rep. So if you aren't the incumbent, there's a high likelihood that if they don't know who you are and understand why you matter to what they do, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to try your product. And even if they do, you're going to ship them a sample and fingers crossed they get it and they know what to do with it. If it takes a lot of work to use your product, right now it's really challenging. So the answer to that is you better get a really good B2B awareness campaign in place. You better target the right operators, because again, just because you want them to take your product doesn't mean they can right now or that they should right now. So again, it's really about, slow down, think about where you want to go and how you want to go, and then you can go fast. But this is a topic that's really hot to me because don't waste resources trying to get in front of an operator if you haven't thought through whether or not you should be there. And then just understand that, listen, if you're in California or Texas, there are really big food service, Annetta and Michelle, what's the name of it? Like the restaurant association. They have little regional ones. That could be
the TRA. Yeah.
Yes. But again, go and shove a meatball in their mouth, but make it a meatball and a taco and maybe a breakfast sandwich. Don't just make it a meatball.
Yeah. Annetta, what are your thoughts on the B2B marketing?
Yeah, I was really interested in when Trish said the strategic part of it, the partnership, right? How do you partner with an operator and let them know, hey, once you give me the yes and you buy my product, I'm going to stay with you and I'm there for the long haul. It's not a one and done, bye, see you later, figure it out. If you build this partnership with that operator and you tell them, hey, here's my point of difference from my competition, know your competition. It's absolutely imperative that you know who you're selling against. Offer that buyer a competitive way to, like Stephanie mentioned, menu your product. Make sure that they know this is a versatile product. It's diverse. How can you support them? Can you support them with data? I mean, if it's new to the world, then they need data to say, hey, this is growing. NPD said that plant-based grew in the food service industry 20% in 2020. That's during a pandemic. I think that would make operators stand up and say, I need to bring these products onto my menu. But you have to support your compelling message with data, culinary, marketing, and be a strategic partner for the operator.
Absolutely. All right, folks. So we have a few more questions we're going to get to, but now is where I remind you again, if you have not connected with everybody that is up on stage, you really want to make sure that you are sending those connections. Trish and I will be doing our announcement of our finalists in a few moments after we wrap up the Q&A. And then, of course, you will have a chance to stay on live and live network with other folks and pop your camera on and speak directly to other attendees and maybe Trish, maybe Annetta, maybe Michelle, maybe Stephanie. Really good opportunity to get some one-on-one interactions. So, all right, this is a great question, and I'm going to pop this one to you, Michelle. Live Kindly is certainly working in the alternative protein space with a lot of different ones. How is the consumer thinking about alternative protein today versus, say, 5 years ago?
I had a conversation today with a major operator asking about protein blends. I don't believe the knowledge of soy versus pea versus fava versus wheat versus you name it blend of protein was something that people were really top of mind or thinking about or saying, I think there's a perception on this. Should I do this? And there's an education that needs to happen. So again, I think 5 years ago is do I put this on the menu or not? Do I put the patty on or not? And now it's what do I want? What form do I want? What hasn't been done, but I want it now? And then what protein should I be using? And does it matter? Do people care? What's the perception? And if you're going to deliver me that protein, do you have the insights to back it up? Why did you pick that? Right? Because they have to have that information to really bring in and validate what they're doing.
Absolutely. Trish, I've got one for you. This is actually really interesting. How do you leverage the data gathered to optimize the service? So with all of your restaurants, is there any data that you're collecting to better optimize the food service or anything you've seen from the folks that you work with?
Are you talking service to the customer? I just want to make sure I understand.
Either or. I think you could, either from the food service perspective, working as an operator, or to the customer.
I don't really know data collection with respect to that. I don't think we're really doing data collection. I think that service to the customer right now, I mean, the expectation, again, like I said at the beginning about allergens and knowledge of the average person, being able to accommodate dietary requirements is key. So we do a lot of trend analysis on what are the dietary things like keto. Agree or disagree with the concept, it's real for people, and they come in and they expect to see a keto segregated diet on your menu, and if you're not able to do that, they're they're going to walk out now. It's as simple as that. So I think it's really seeing around the corner of what trends are coming, and trying to adopt your menu as best you can to that. And I think part of that goes to Michelle's point earlier about education, and really the more you can educate your consumer without being judgmental in any way about what is the right way and a good way to eat. And I think bringing those types of menu items onto your menu are important as well.
Absolutely. All right. Aki's got a great question. I'll throw this one to you, Stephanie. Margins when it comes to selling food service customers compared to retail when using a distributor. Should you expect to change your margins? Any advice there?
Yeah, no, actually the margins in food service are actually better than in retail, like significantly. And one of the things I love about food service for emerging brands or newer companies is, when you go into retail, you've got slotting fees and refills, all these things that suck up your dollars like upfront, right? That's money that you're literally putting on the table before you sold your first case. Whereas in food service, all of that trade spend is in arrears or at the time of, right? So it's when the operator buys the case, right? You may give something off invoice through the distributor, but it's really more attached to the sell through in the channel to the operator versus retail, and that's upfront, right? So it can be a great way to bring in revenue. And I don't see, yes, you have deductions, and it can be very complicated, but I don't see, and I haven't seen even in the last 6 years, the gains in distribution deductions that I see in the natural space in retail. I mean, it's just brutal. So generally the trade spend, and this is, again, slow down to go fast. If you build your pricing architecture for the channel up front, before you're out talking to Compass and Cisco and everybody else, then the margins are really, really good. And customer by customer, whether they're using a group purchasing organization, going through a contract management company like Compass, using a Cisco versus a produce distributor or whomever, you know exactly what your margin is. You don't have the surprises, I don't think, and all the things that can come along with retail. So again, listen, I'm a food service fan, but I really love that as a brand, if you do it right up front, you can like make a really good margin comparatively.
Okay.
Can I add something to that? I think Stephanie's dead on with it. But you also, I think with that, the caveat is that the risk really shifts during the selling process. So if you're a brand going to sell food service, you're putting a lot of the risk onto the operator, right? Because you don't have as many, you don't have a slotting fee, you don't have a guarantee. Once the operator puts it into their kitchen, it's theirs to keep. And so it is a different approach. And I think that it's a loaded question, right? So you might make more margin, but how, and also the operator may only have one plant-based protein on their menu, right? Whereas a retailer is going to have multiple different options. So at this time, I think that's changing daily.
Okay, lightning round. This is our last set of questions, and then we will go to our finalist announcement. Trish, we're going to start with you. One sentence piece of advice you want to leave everybody with attending today?
I'm going to go back to collaboration. Think differently in terms of how you're packaging, how you're developing, and don't be afraid to reach out to understand even down to the technology that the operator's using. A lot of times, we'll receive food samples for something that is generally better deep fried when we don't have a deep fryer. And it just, so connect and know your operator and do that initial research to figure out whether your product, to Stephanie's point, actually makes sense in the menu of the operator. Don't just spray and pray. Make sure you really understand who you're talking to.
All right, think collaboratively. Michelle, one line of advice?
Food service is about grit and being deliriously positive.
Cool.
When you're forging forward with something new, it takes grit and deliriously positive mentality.
Annetta?
For me, it's very much similar to what Trish said. It's not a one-size-fits-all channel, so you have to be intimately aware of who you're selling and know that food service operator and customer and communicate why they should bring your product in. Well,
Stephanie?
Check your ego at the door.
Cool.
And if you slow down, you can go really fast.
Okay, and my last one, I'll start with you, Stephanie. Favorite vegan restaurant you've ever eaten at? Go.
Oh, I can't think of the name of it. It's in San Francisco. They do sushi and it's amazing and crap. It starts with an S.
Shison?
Yes, I love that place.
Yushin. Yep. Annetta? Oh, you're on mute.
yeah, I actually am a flexitarian. So I like this little place right here local. It's a Luna Grill. It's a regional chain. They allow me to eat nut and vegan products, lots of veggies. So I love Luna Grill.
Michelle, favorite vegan restaurant?
I live in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm going to shout out to Green Vegetarian. It's a local restaurant, the first restaurant that really opened my eyes to what plants can do for your meal.
All right, and Trish, when you're sick of the amazing Copper Branch, where are you eating?
I love Gracias Madre, California. That would have been one of my favorite experiences.
All right, just down the street from you right now. Okay, well, thank you to all of our panelists. We are really excited for our next segment, and for folks that want to stay on to connect with everybody here, please stay on. We will leave the live networking open. So we'll say goodbye to Stephanie, Annetta, and Michelle. And Trish and I will stay up here, and we've got our exciting announcement. How excited are you for this, Trish?
I'm so excited.
So how is the testing been going?
It's been unbelievable. The feedback, the hardest thing is going to be the final selection. I don't even know how we're going to do it. It's just been, we've had so many different experiments with all three of the products and just unbelievable.
Yes, I'm so excited. I tried 2 of the 3. So I can vouch that 2 of them are delicious. I tried one of them when they were a prototype actually, and it was delicious.
Oh,
just I can only imagine now. Awesome.
Yeah, it's insane.
Okay, are we ready to debut?
Ready.
Okay. So, loving that music. Are you excited? I can't wait to eat everything. Well, thank you, Trish, for helping us put together this amazing contest. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. We're so excited about what we can roll out on the Copper Branch menu. And I have a feeling that this is just like the first of many things to come.
Oh, thank you for everything you've done. And thank you to everybody who submitted their products. It was not an easy selection at all. And I'm really excited to get ready to announce the winner.
Awesome.
Thank you for everything.
Okay, well, everybody, now we are going to transition to the live networking. So if you stay on, you'll get a chance to live connect with perhaps Trish or myself or Stephanie or Annetta or Michelle or any of the audience attendees. We'll leave this open for about 20 minutes or so, and hope to see you in there. Trish, I can't wait to get over the border and eat some Copper Branch.
I can't wait either.
Oh, it's going to be fun. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and see you in the networking.
Thank you.